Rongo te po, karango te ao, te hei, mauri ora.
Thank you. Welcome to those in the gallery. I trust you know where facilities are if we have to get out very quickly. You'll hear a loud alarm if we need to evacuate, so down the stairs and outside. Unusual procedure with earthquakes if we're an unlikely event of them occurring. Toilets back out there for those of you who are not familiar. Okay, just remind everybody this meeting's being live streamed, and the staff will be dealing with the technology today, so we wish them well on that. Hope it all goes smoothly. We have no apologies. I'm not aware there's any change in the order of business. Anyone got any interests that they want to declare today? Any change in interests? No. No public forum today, so can we move to confirmation of the minutes? Everybody happy with how they've been recorded? Moved Councillor Dowler and Councillor Rollo. Any comments? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Go on to the substantial part of the business, which is the deliberations following the hearings last Friday. So Paul, do you want to come forward and just introduce the report that you have done and to respond to any questions that panel members might have on that?
Sure.
Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. Sure, I won't talk for too long. I just thought be worth just briefly talking to my recommendation, and then I've got a couple of really minor corrections, which I'll just go through at the end. So I think I made it pretty clear in my April report to the Saxton Field Committee that I don't see these amendments as inferring support from a professional perspective for alcohol advertising or sponsorship, and there's no shortage of evidence pointing to the issues and harm that creates. And I think that's been referenced in my April report, as well as the submissions that we've heard from many submitters, including Te Whatu Ora and Alcohol Health Watch, amongst others. And, you know, it's a little sad that we're in this predicament, especially when you consider that the France Rugby World Cup was able to be held without any alcohol sponsorship in the stadiums, and it's perhaps just a reflection of where we are as a culture and the priorities that we have in a country, in our politics. Because when I look around, it really is ubiquitous. The kids walking past off licences on the way to school. You walk into the supermarket, there's an entire aisle dedicated to alcohol with a huge wall of wine on one side and a wall of beer on the other, and mail on the letterbox, and festivals dedicated to it. So, you know, as a parent of two teenage boys, when we go to the supermarket, it's actually a little bit embarrassing. And it's in that context that I wanted to paint that picture, because that's where my recommendation is sitting. And the deliberation that we've got in front of us today is really to what extent that exposure is increased and that harm is increased by allowing a few international games of cricket a year at Saxton Field that have sponsorship present. And following submissions, I'm just not convinced from an officer perspective that allowing that to occur will significantly contribute to normalising alcohol when it's just so prevalent already. I'm not saying it'll help, but I'm just saying that what's the additional risk and harm, and what's the evidence of that? If I had my way, we wouldn't have it, and I agree 99% with a lot of the submissions that were in opposition, but it's just that evidence was quite broad in nature and more general rather than specific to the actual 2 or 3 games a year, and I didn't feel like there was enough evidence around that actual impact of those few games. So for me, not allowing that to happen in the current New Zealand context is just a bit out of perspective, and I think unreasonable, and would be considered punitive by a large part of the community. And I think it's a really important point to note that through this debate, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that Saxton Field will be still free of alcohol advertising outside of the Oval all year and inside of the Oval for at least 360 days. So it's still a pretty honourable standard that the Reserve Management Plan has, and I think that does still show leadership. And we've got the phase-out clause as well, so we're expecting, you know, by the time this plan is reviewed, that you know, work will be done with stakeholders, and this will come out. Following the submissions, I've recommended adding an additional policy in relation to that phase out, and that's when I drafted it, I just really had it in the expectations, but I've brought that wording into the policy as well, which you'll note in the blue text at the end of the attachment on the last page of the agenda. And that's just to reflect better what was expected and give it a bit more teeth. I've also recommended that councils note the suggestions from Te Pātu Ora and Alcohol Health Watch. So just a couple of really minor corrections, and it's hardly worth noting, but I will. Page 13, 0.6.2.8, the second line should say section 8. Page 21 in the options, the second option should say option 3 instead of option 2. And page 24, it's right at the end, 13.7, the second paragraph should say section 7. I'm really happy to take questions.
Any questions? I thought we'd do questions of Paul at this point, and then after they've all been asked and responded to, then we'll move on to discussing the report itself and any debate that might engender. So just questions of Paul at this point. Anybody? Campbell?
Morning, Paul. Thanks for your comments here. They were good. I saw there on, I can't see over there, sorry, so I'm going to refer to here, where it takes a recommendation from Te Whatu Ora around the Nelson Tasman Alcohol Strategy 2006. But more a broad question, was that actually, has it been in the consideration of officers to amend or update that in the near future, or has that simply come through the submissions that we received?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of the program of work in that policy area, so I would have to come back to you on that. But I'm not aware of it being on the work program, but that's not to say it might not be.
Do you want to comment on
that? Yeah, thanks. Through the chair, I think the reason that's in there is because of the submissions. So they were comments made by submitters, and Mr. Harrington has just put that in as a recommendation to recognise that those submitters did make those comments, and that he felt they were reasonable comments to make.
So I think if it is adopted from this committee and included in the recommendations, then the two councils can obviously discuss that and decide collectively or individually whether they want to do that. Any other questions? Any Tim? No? Barry? Glenn? You got one? Okay, cool.
I'm on page 138, right at the last, with one of your read comments. Give you a chance to catch up. That's 4.824. 138. It's actual the last page of the whole deal under the amendment situation. It talks about the international cricket events. So an international cricket event is obviously sanctioned by the New Zealand cricket to happen in the country, because they'll have to organise all the insurances and everything like that for it. I assume I'm on the executive of a New Zealand-wide thing and everything. We have to sanction it, put dates in place so the insurance companies or whatever all know about it and stuff. So I'm just, as I said earlier in the piece, I'm not a cricket follower, but I am concerned that we have international cricket. Great, it comes here. But we also have other cricket by central districts versus whoever in the country. I know central districts because that's our zone. That will limit, if we don't include them in here and that type of thing in here, they won't be allowed to have alcohol or alcohol sponsorship at the park. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, through the chair, that is correct to a point, and I've spoken with Central Districts Cricket around this. they're comfortable with that. The teams that do have alcohol sponsorship and they do wear clothing with emblems on it, and there is an exemption in the policy already for clothing, so the policy doesn't relate to strips, to team uniforms. But that's correct. So if a Central Districts Cricket host a game in Nelson, they wouldn't be able to have advertising at the event, and that would be my recommendation, to stick with that.
So if there's no further questions, we can move to, thank you, Paul, for responding to those and introducing your report. We can now move to the report. So any comments, queries that people want to make? Might be an appropriate time, Glenn, to just flag that you hadn't suggested an amendment, which is, we can put up on the screen.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. I've just got an amendment, if we could bring that up. It just relates to the incorporation of, where appropriate, where a exemption is permitted, a temporary exemption is permitted for alcohol advertising, that we encourage negotiations on low or zero alcohol beer. So if there is advertising, it's just encouraging that be a low alcohol beer or zero alcohol product where possible.
So this would, if adopted by the committee, this would be added to the expectations, which is in the second to last page, or in the agenda 137, with an additional expectation. There's two currently there under 4.8.1. So this would be a third one. And that's what that motion is referring to. So any comments or thoughts on that? We could move it as an amendment if people are comfortable that it would be something that would be there in place, I guess, in the plan if it's adopted for future discussion when the plan is, the reserve management plan is up for review. Tim, you have a question?
So I just get clarity. You got page 137, which I've got in front of me, and I'm just reading that page 137. That's part of the recommendation. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think we should probably treat it as an amendment that's been proposed by panel members, and then debate that separately. And then if it's accepted, then it could become part of the substantive motion.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand page 137, which I've got in front of me, and we've got that there, and then we've got some stuff in red there, and it's regards to discussion on alcohol and policies. You're identifying that as part of an amendment as well. Yeah.
Well, that's where it would go.
Okay, that's okay. What you're saying is if we supported that would be added to.
Yeah, if we agree with it, it would be added in there, and what's in red would be added in, and that's where it would come in the document, would be in the amendments.
Thank you. Just give me a moment reading what we've got changed on
that section of the reserve management plan. Yep.
And that's sorry to clarify, that's been added by staff in regards to page 137. That's added since we've had this report.
Councillor Dakey sent it through to me yesterday, so I referred it on to staff, and originally he was suggesting somewhere slightly differently, but I think in discussions with staff, we thought probably a better place for it would be in that expectations rather than at the end of one of those other.
So what I'm getting clarity on page 137 of our report, we've got the report, then we've got in red, which is some additional wording stating what alcohol, an opinion there on what alcohol is identified as. That is an added, I understand that's been added by staff to add to what we already had in the document.
Yeah, there's one that Paul referred to before, which is the blue bit.
If you want, we'll come back and clarify.
Yeah.
There's a fair bit added there.
Paul to clarify that.
So, yeah, through the chair, that page 137, all the red text and on page 138. That was all part of the proposed amendment that was consulted on.
That was what went out.
Yeah, the blue text has come in as a recommendation from me
Okay.
after submissions.
Yep.
And this text on the screen would come in after 4.8.1.2.
Can you read out what you've got in blue? That's not on here, is that right?
Should be on the last page of your agenda.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Scroll a little bit further. Very good. Thank you. No, I've got that in front of me. Appreciate that. No, thank
So
you.
that's my addition. The text that's showing here would just be an additional 4.8.1.3. So it would go under that red text as another paragraph.
Cool. Hey, that's been very helpful. Thank you. Just read that.
Any other questions from other panel members? Well, I'm just checking that. Yeah, sure.
For you, Chair, Paul, happy if you sit there. 4.8.2.5, prior to the next review of this plan, work will be undertaken with relevant stakeholders in relation to alcohol advertising. Do you think that that wording there would cover your in the report well enough, or adding into the expectations here on reviewing, moving towards lower alcohol? Do you think we need to add that in? I would have thought that a part of that review would be considering reducing the alcohol limit as well. Have I got a question
Do you
there?
want to come back up to the table, Paul? Sorry.
So through the chair, they're two sort of separate things. Like my last paragraph in blue that I've added in is a policy that relates to when the plan's about to be reviewed. So the years before it's going to be reviewed. So probably around 2027 or 8, we would start engaging with stakeholders, and that would be Alcohol Health Watch, Cricket, Whatuora, to try and get the next review in line. This proposal is across the next 10 years, basically, over the next 8 years until it's reviewed. So that's going to be live. The recommendation is my understanding. It's a live expectation from when the plan's adopted.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tim, you have a question?
Just I see what we've got in blue, which has been added since we've gone out to consultation. So my concern there is, that wasn't something, but correct me if I'm wrong, that wasn't something that's been consulted on, but you might say that's what the feedback was. The other concern, that puts us out, what you've got in blue there, saying that we would phase it out ahead of the next round. That puts us out of step with every other region in New Zealand who would be tendering and vying for an international cricket match. That's my concern.
Through the chair, this is sort of 7 or so years away. So I would hope that we wouldn't be out of step by then. That would be my response. Like, I'm hoping that this is an interim solution to allow alcohol advertising, and that by that stage we might be in a different place.
Has that, based on other regions have said, hey, we're going to phase it out?
No, this is a response to what the plan has been the last couple of years, and it's changing it, and then we're hoping it to get, and this isn't a strict policy that it shall, it's saying that we will work with people to work towards it.
Yeah. So my just feedback to the chair there, thank you for that feedback to the chair, is I can't.
Try and finish any questions before.
Well, that gives you a bit of direction, because then you can reply to that if there's I've missed something there. That I had a little bit of issue with that in blue, because that is assuming with no indication or direction from any other organisation that they'll be doing the same. So I see that very much would be putting out a step, and we're just sort of setting ourselves up for being ignored by potential games.
Yeah, if I could just add, this was in response specifically to the Te Whatuora submission, and in particular, who requested that we had a timeline in place around phasing this out, and I didn't think that was practical, which I've referred to in the report. This is in place of that, which is that the expectation becomes more of a policy that staff will do that engagement, rather than it's just an expectation. We will do that.
Yeah.
Thanks, through the chair. And I think you can be pretty much 100% sure that at the next review of the management plan, you're going to have a debate about this issue. But I think there's absolutely no doubt about that. So flagging that you're going to be having a debate about, I think, is quite reasonable, and I think it's a good response to the submissions that you've received. Doesn't put you in the position that that you have to make one decision or the other at that point. But Mr. Harrington's advice is the advice that staff are giving. You can accept that or not at the time you make your decision on this matter later today.
So from regards to process, we've got what's in front of us, plus Councillor Dykey's amendment, plus the staff amendment in blue. Would we be taking those quite separately? I'm talking about the blue one.
We can do if you wish. Yeah. Any other questions of Paul? Possible amendments? Okay, thanks, Paul. All right, so we can start debating this. I guess there's a point, which point we start on if you want to discuss the additional ones that's come through from staff. Other was 48.2.5 and the schedule at the back. You want to start with that one? One that we've just been discussing. So you have any additional comments? You obviously have some concerns about that, Tim. Do you have any other comments you want to make?
Yeah, if this is the time to debate the added amendment in blue by officers.
Yep, let's discuss that one.
Yep. Okay. I appreciate the work that the staff have done, and a lot of work going on, not just today, but prior to getting those games we had last summer. As you're aware, we stood out like a sore thumb in being the only region in New Zealand that had suddenly at the 11th hour, then they'd all decided we were going to exempt it. I know it's part of the policy, but on not allowed, I should say, better word it, not allowed for that game, the alcohol advertising. I see in blue what we've been put in there by officers. That's an assumption. There's quite an assumption there that there's an assumption that we're going to have probably the same council that made the decision a few months back. It could well be quite a different council that's around the table with a different outlook, but also more strongly in the fact that it's not based on any change of direction that other cities may make. It's an assumption that we won't be alone and be, risking getting the game here. So I just think it's a lot of assumptions and the fact that there's a lot of competition for these matches, and we're very blessed that we got it because we were able to turn over that original decision at not the 11th, but the 11th or the 11th hour to enable those games to go ahead. So I think we should very much be making a decision for this term and this term only, and let the next council make a decision based on if there's been a change of environment or a change of what cricket's boxes tick or a change of what other cities we'll be competing against. So I think we've got to, and what came through very strongly in the submissions is cricket was very well supported, it was very well behaved, and they felt a lot of benefit of enabling advertising in the way it was in a controlled manner. Thank you.
I'll just make a comment. The plan has a life of 10 years, as you're probably aware.
Yep.
I guess it's been in place for 2 years, so a review would no doubt start probably year 6 or 7. So I'd say if things haven't changed and with respect to the nationwide situation that we're currently in, then I would imagine that's something that's taken into account when this would be discussed. So I don't see it's necessarily hamstringing anybody. It's just something that will be registered in the plan, listed in the plan as a consideration to be taken into account and suggestions in terms of process of talking to stakeholders. If the situation hasn't changed throughout the country, in other words, we might still be the only council that has that policy, then I'm sure that the councillors who are taking that into account in a future Saxton Field committee will take that into account, I would have thought.
Well, that
so I don't see any kind of risk in that sense.
That reinforces my point. It doesn't need to be here at this stage. Let the next term round decide where to direct from there. I won't cross or I won't.
Sorry, I didn't quite follow you there.
I just say that reinforces if it's in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years time, there is a change of what's happening around the rest of the country or not. That would be something that council at the time would take in consideration rather than us preempting.
Okay, well, clear.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm comfortable with this wording. I don't think it's as binding as it might seem. I think it just highlights it very strongly and it gives the option going forward. I don't see it as a locked-in clause, so I'm comfortable with it.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it. I think when we went out for consultation, I think we were more than honest that at some point we will be looking at reviewing the reserve management plan. That's exactly what it's there for, every 10 years to be reviewed. And I think while we're putting that in there, I appreciate the comment Councillor Dyke made that it's it's not binding us to anything. Sometimes it's actually okay to be the leader and not the follower. And if we have to be in a few years' time someone that leads by a different example, then I'm happy to do that. But I certainly don't think that wording's locking us into any set in stone. And I think the staff will appreciate working with all stakeholders on what the future of the Oval looks like in 2030 and beyond.
Okay. So we should, in theory, have a mover and a seconder for the adding this to it. So you're happy to move and got a seconder? Are you happy to support seconder? Yeah, just the blue amendment.
Not the amendment.
No, not on that. No, what it's in the
Yeah.
adding 4.825 that came through as staff have indicated from the submissions.
Yeah,
So that's all.
That 38, not what was on the screen.
Yeah. Okay. No, we'll just deal with this amendment because this came through as a result of the submission process and staff considering those. So that's all we're debate at the moment. So we've got it moved by Councillor Dyke and seconded by Councillor Rollo. Happy to do that. Sorry, I cut you off before you had a chance to comment, but any comments now from any of the committee on that? Yes. No, he's just moving he's seconding the movement as I understand it.
Seconding 4.8.2.5.
Be added.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for clarity, the blue text is included in the original recommendation that's on the screen right now.
So we don't need to move.
Yeah, sure. That is the one that you would move and second if you'd like the original recommendation that includes the blue text. And the one with the red text is the amendment. Paul, can you clarify on that, please?
Yeah, I was just clarifying that if you move those amendments, if you move resolutions on the screen now, that's the entire amendment to the reserve management plan. It's not just the blue text. It's the entire thing.
Okay, I was just trying to accommodate Councillor Skinner's request that we debate them individually, but obviously that doesn't quite follow the most appropriate procedure. So
I just wonder, Mr. Chair, if we look at Councillor Dyke's amendment and then come back to what's actually on the screen now.
thing. Yeah, okay, that might
would help.
That might clarify that. Okay. I'll just give them a couple of minutes. Okay, we'll just have a short adjournment, a few minutes, so we'll come back in a few minutes. Right, hopefully we've got a clear pathway now. We'll resume the meeting. Thank you for your indulgence. We'll sort this out. So, Tim, do you want to just flag what you're...
Yeah, I'm just saying, hey, I've made my point clear in regards to the blue, but if there's no other similar view to me in the panel, I won't slow the progress down to make a decision on the...
I'll just call it. Does anyone support Tim's move to remove the wording that was in the blue that was added by staff following the submissions? If not, then he's happy for us to just accept that he's in a minority view and we'll move forward. Councillor Dower.
Well, the word's actually up above in the red on the previous page anyway, under 4.812. And the blue was just confirming that, what I can say.
Okay.
It just adds to it, I think. Yeah.
So whether it stays on it, you'd have to remove both.
Yeah, so yeah, no, I understand. And that's on the scrolling through on the digital, which is great when you've got paper. What page is that?
137.
Oh, that's what I was looking at originally. Okay, yep.
Yeah. You're right?
Yeah.
All right, so if this, we can take it that there's a majority of us who favour that being retained. Is that people's fair assessment? Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on. Thanks for helping sort that out. So we'll go to what effectively is the suggestion from Councillor Dykey that is up on the board, or will be up on the screen. This is the one that this will refer to having an additional expectation. So there'll be additional expectation 4.8.13 will be added, and that's included, as you can see, in both two above there and in justice. Whoop. Yep, we're back up now. Cool. So do you want to formally move that so we can debate it, perhaps?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Happy to move it. And it represents a lot of views in the community heard very strongly that this would be a measure that they would support. So that's why it's in here today. Happy to move it.
They have a seconder for adding those bits in red to the overall motion. So that we'll debate this as an amendment to that. I'll second it. Right then. So any comments from anybody on this? No?
Yeah, no, I can't support the amendment. Okay, I think what we had there originally is very good. I think we're once again sort of pre-determining and B sort of setting ourselves up for a weaker position to, I know it's only a request rather than a firm demand, and understand that. But once again, I think believe that sort of time we've got over international cricket coming up, Australia versus New Zealand, I think we need to be in the strongest position possible. And I'm very comfortable how the cricket's been run, and we've already got lots and lots of rules and regulations on how various products can or can't be distributed or advertised. And I think the way it was advertised extremely well, low key. And on the end of the day, the cricket was the winner. People enjoyed sitting there watching the game, and we've had no issues. So why try to fix something which is not broken?
Any other comments from panel committee members? You ready to take a vote on it? So, okay, I'll call it all those in favour of that amendment being added into the substantive motion, please say aye. Aye. Against?
No.
Declare it lost. Thank you. Right, we can move now, I think, to the back to, I guess, without the red version.
I'll just note, Mr. Chair, that I have put a further amendment up to the main report now. That
Okay, so
I'm happy
we
to
should
move
probably
that.
look at your amendment. Yeah, sorry. So just up on the screen now, you've got Camerolo's moved an additional recommendation to the joint committee, requests that both mayors from Tasman District and Nelson City Councils write a letter to the New Zealand Cricket expressing our desire to retain international cricket. So, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I will. And
Okay, yeah, sorry. Oh, good point. So seconded by Councillor Skinner, moved by Councillor.
Yes,
Yeah.
they're right. Yeah.
yeah, no,
But no.
Sorry, ran the wrong way, other way.
I'm happy to support this, I think, and I said this from the moment this come before the council table as an issue around alcohol at cricket. All of a sudden become the elephant in the room, and the issue become, do we want cricket, yes or no? And I think everyone in the community has expressed a desire to retain cricket here in Nelson. We spend a huge amount of money every year retaining a world-class venue. I've been to a few cricket ovals in my time, and Saxton Oval was certainly up there, and I think that the only thing we can do to retain cricket is going back to New Zealand cricket with the support from this committee to say actually we do want cricket to remain as a key model within our community. And I think the submission from the father of the two kids that were both 14 that went to the cricket for the first time and had a wonderful day really set the example of what cricket in Nelson's about. And we can discuss all the other things that happen at cricket, but I think the average person who actually goes to Saxton Oval just wants to see a bowler bowl a ball and a batter hit a six. And so I'm happy to move this amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Any other speakers?
Yeah, I support that, and I assume that the mayors would be anyway. But I think that makes it very clear we're open for business. And I think not just the mayors, every single councillor around both tables should write and say, hey, we're open for business. We've had a robust debate. Let's make it happen.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Unanimously. Now let's go back to the substantive motion, which will now include that part 4 that we've just included. So somebody prepared to move the substantive motion, the complete works? Councillor Skinner, Councillor Daiki, thank you. Any further discussion on that? Probably battered it around a bit, haven't we? Sorry about the pun. All right.
I caught it.
Yeah, my kids would say a bad dad pun. So
I nearly slipped past it.
yes, we'll stop before we get too far down this track, I think. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you to the public for coming along, and thank you, Mitty, for all your work on this hearings and the deliberation, and particularly the two Tasman councillors who've kind of been thrown into this with perhaps not a lot of warning, but thank you very much for being part of the process. We'll organise. I'm unfortunately going to be away in the North Island at the time when this goes to the joint committee, but I think Councillor Rollo is happy to move that forward, but the rest of you who are there can discuss that further, I think. Unfortunately, Paul Harrington's going to be away as well, so we just need somebody who's going to introduce it at the meeting. So
When is the joint committee?
I think it's 9th of July.
Okay, very good. That's right.
So I'll leave that with you to resolve outside the meeting. If there's no further business, I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much. Yes, and close.
whakaria te tapu kia wātia ai te ara, kia turu ki whakataka ai, kia turu ki whakataha ai, hui e tae ki e.